Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question now is that Clause 4 stand part. Tim McIndoe.
Mr Chair, this is the first time I've spoken on this debate, and this is, of course, the weighty section of the bill. I hope the committee will indulge me if just for a few seconds I pay a tribute to the retiring member in charge of the bill, my very good friend Dr Cam Calder, who is a man who served as Deputy Chair when I was Chair of the Justice and Electoral Committee and was a very loyal and hard-working Deputy Chair, and in recent times the roles have been reversed and I've had the pleasure of serving on the Education and Science Committee, which he has chaired admirably and has dealt with some very important legislation. So I want to thank him for being such a collegial, congenial member of this House, congratulate him on his achievement in bringing this bill to this point, and wish him all the very best in what I know will be a long and illustrious retirement. And I have no doubt at all that he will reflect with great pride on his achievement in getting this bill through the House. So I would just like to put a few questions to the member on this particular section of the bill, because, as I say, it is the section that deals with all the substantive issues that arise from this important bill. And let us not be under any doubt, despite the humour that at times has prevailed in this debate, that this is a very serious matter. It is a matter that enjoys considerable support from our law enforcement agencies, from civil aviation authorities, from health authorities and others in the community, because the real risk to public safety from these particular measures, or this particular weapon or lasers being in the wrong hands and misused, is very, very serious indeed. So, sir, I would like to ask the member, and perhaps he might be good enough to jot down some of the questions that I raised to see if he could answer them, why the change was made under the bill that he initially made that has come back to the House from handheld lasers to high-powered laser pointers. As a layman, I'm sort of left wondering what the difference is, but in particular I'm wondering whether there is the potential for some legal ambiguity here, in that not everybody would necessarily need to hold the laser in a hand for it to be able to be used with danger. It might, for instance, be held in the mouth or even between the toes. And so I'd be interested to know whether that is going to be sufficiently watertight in order to stand up should there be a need for this matter to go to court. And while an opposite member is in some way questioning the basis behind this, I would suggest that that is a very serious issue. One never wishes to have legislation that is ambiguous and therefore subject to some sort of judicial ambiguity, because that can be the reason why people who are otherwise as guilty as sin get off on a technicality in court. And if the opposition members think that that's not serious, they are misguided. So the other question I'd like to put to the member in charge of the bill is it to emphasise that possession is sufficiently worrying without having to demonstrate an intent to use? Because obviously in criminal law normally it's both actus reus and mens rea that are required. And as I read section 13b, I am just wondering what the particular emphasis is on that issue. In an earlier contribution, the member in charge of the bill made the point that these are not toys, and he was absolutely right in saying that. So my question would be, as the one who hasn't sat on the Select Committee and therefore hasn't had the opportunity to hear the submissions on the bill, what submissions were made on the specific issue of definition by the police, by the civil aviation authorities and by other submitters? Could I also ask him what was the motivation of other submitters on this section of the bill? Because clearly there are certain people. The danger of handheld lasers being misused in aviation is very obvious and extraordinarily dangerous. The danger of lasers being used, one of my colleagues mentioned, during a rugby game, but potentially blinding somebody, is obviously very, very serious, and for that reason we understand why both the police and health authorities would be concerned. But I wonder what the motivation of other submitters were, and indeed what backgrounds and experience they brought to their submissions on the bill, because it would help for us all to understand what this particular section is driving at. I think if we understood what it was that other submitters in particular had in mind when they submitted on the bill. I also was interested, because in view of the fact that the member drew our attention to the fact that this amends the Summary Offences Act of 1981.
I call the honourable member Sue Moroney.
That the question be now put.
Well, I've only heard one speech. Only heard one. I call the honourable member Mike Saban.
Yes, there has only been one call, as I recall.